Coming up on We Talk News this week, the delaying tactic by the DEA on rescheduling adds to the industry's debt obligations with a whopping $4.2 billion projected in unpaid bills before the end of this year. Plus, New York's cannabis industry continues to implode, but will a ruling this week by the state Supreme Court in favor of Leafly open the door for less restrictive advertising and marketing rules? We'll talk with Jeffrey Hoffman, one of the city's most well-known, outspoken cannabis lawyers in his native state. Plus, Hawaii's Finance Committee has now rejected a bipartisan proposed plan to move forward with adult use legalization, killing that bill for the year. And now that Florida can start collecting signatures to put on the adult use legalization question on the November ballot, 6 multi-state operators pony up $15 million more to join Trulieve in their fight to get that ballot question approved.
I'm Amie Carter at the 53rd Hash Bash in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. What started as an act of civil disobedience is now celebrating the legality of cannabis. Thousands of people were doing just that, and I'll have a report coming up on We Talk News.
But I do want to start with a quote from a famous group of San Francisco. Don't give me no Bam or weed. We don't smoke that in the SFC.
All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news reports on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of We Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. Ever since New York State launched their adult use cannabis market, it seems that every move the state has made has backfired. Of course, with thousands of illegal, unlicensed shops outnumbering the licensed ones 25-1, law enforcement, politicians, including Governor Kathy Hochul, have all tried different tactics to shut down the illegal shops, only to see them open again days after they are closed. Well, now that state Supreme District Court has delivered a legal win to Leafly, one of the largest cannabis online websites that dominates the market. The court case ruled that the existing restrictions on marketing and advertising by the Office of Cannabis Management is unfair. However, the language used by the presiding judge may have a huge impact on the future of that market. Justice Kevin Bryant's decision included this statement, quote, "Given the absence of any evidence of the process by which these regulations were developed and approved, this court must find that the conclusions were arbitrary and capricious, and that there is no sound and substantial basis on the record to support respondents' actions," unquote. The judge also declared other cannabis provisions unlawful in his ruling. And Jeffrey Hoffman is a pro-cannabis attorney from New York with 25 years experience in the business. He hosts the very popular Ask Me Anything podcast on Wednesdays at 4:20 on LinkedIn, and PCM founder Jimmy Young did just that in his one-on-one interview this week.
My question is, does this Supreme Court ruling by this judge have implications beyond the borders of New York State?
So no. And just to get everybody straight, everybody hears Supreme Court. We're New York. We like to do things that confuse everybody. Whereas everybody thinks Supreme Court in DC and in most other states, the Supreme Court is the highest court. Actually, here in New York, Supreme Court is the lowest court. So this is the court that's at the county level. It's the lowest court. This is not to mean like, don't screw with these guys. I mean, it's like, how in the federal system, it's district court, court of appeals, Supreme Court. Yeah. This is the Supreme Court in New York State is at the district court level in the federal system. Great right? Analogy. Our top court here in New York is called the Court of Appeals. which also confuses everybody because you would think that is the second court, right? You would have your district court or whatever, where you would then go to the Court of Appeals, and then you would go to a Supreme Court. In New York, it's Supreme Court, and then we have a thing called the Appellate Division, and then they name the department that it's part of. So like Manhattan and the Bronx are the first department. The other parts of New York City and the home counties around it is the second department. Upstate to the north is the third department. I think out west is the fourth department. I may have that backwards. I can never keep track how this all works, but that's kind of how it works here. But
now let's talk about the Office of Cannabis Management in New York.
Sure.
I'm somewhat familiar with what's going on with Jenny's in New York, and the little personal conflict between a member of the OCM and Jenny. What's your read on that, and is it vindictive?
So we just, look, it's a mess.
Yes.
I'll start with this way. You can't do and say the things that were done when you're a regulator about your regulatees. You just can't do that, right? You just can't. And
how old was that guy? How old was he, Damien Fagone? How old is he? Do you know?
Mr. Fagan, I don't know how old he is.
Yeah.
Look, I've worked, and it's just like this. I don't want to weigh in, and I don't want to muddy the waters here. And I want to be very, like, he worked with me a lot to get some of the expungement rules fixed, right? So the guy is a smart gentleman, and he does care a lot about what we're doing. I do think he made a mistake in how he behaved in this situation. I don't think anyone could debate that.
That interview in its entirety will be released on Thursday of this week and is available right now on procannabismedia.com.
I'm Christopher Smith, bringing you the New York Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Now, you might have heard about this little earthquake we had this week. No, I'm not talking about that little temblor that they had in New Jersey. I'm talking about the ruling by Judge Kevin Bryant that declared the entire regulatory structure of the New York cannabis market to be null and void. And now, when you bring a potential $5 billion market to a standstill, that's an earthquake in my book. The ruling was in response to a lawsuit by Leafly, the big cannabis marketing and data firm, who sued the Office of Cannabis Management over marketing regulations. And by the way, it's about frickin' time that someone defended our First Amendment rights to speak about cannabis, just like Timothy Leary defended Fifth Amendment rights back in 1969. I digress. You might remember the judge's name. Last year, the New York market was virtually shut down by a lawsuit that claimed that New York's Office of Cannabis Management had broken the law in giving licenses to convicted felons, but not to veterans, women, small businesses, and the disabled as the law specified. Judge Bryant was the guy who shut it down for most of the year. Now, it seemed like he was putting a stake through its heart. During discovery, Judge Bryant became so enraged by the arbitrary and capricious way that New York regulations were developed, he put a boot up OCM's butt. Everybody panicked for most of the day, but finally, a few hours later, it became clear that Judge Bryant had thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and in an earthquake aftershock, he amended his ruling to just include what Leafly had sued for, the right to free speech. This left the rest of the regulations still standing, but as most experts agree, they are now very wobbly, or as my favorite nephew likes to say, they're wee-wee teetering. All this comes at a time when OCM is touting their successes at opening up 99 stores, 99 dispensaries. But New Yorkers are quick to remind them we have 99 stores out of hundreds of licensees that have not opened their stores yet. We have 99 stores versus thousands of illegal dispensaries that sell smuggled, untested weed for half price. And we have 99 stores to serve 86 million residents, commuters, and tourists in New York, in what could be the biggest market in New York, in the U.S., but is not. Keep one eye on the Richter scale and the other eye on the New York cannabis market. I'm Christopher Smith with the New York Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
New York has become a prime example of what not to do with new state regulations, but many of the 24 legal states have tried and none seem to get it right. Minnesota was the 23rd state to move forward with adult use legalization, and now regulators have proposed amendments to the law that was passed in May of last year. There is a social equity clause that offers a temporary license for those most impacted by the failed war on drugs and will be awarded via a lottery this summer. Interestingly, the original law was passed in May of 2023, but now the Minnesota Office of Cannabis Regulations is going through that bill and will redline it and send it back to the legislature. Based on the history of how the state of New York fouled up its legal rollout, Minnesota regulators do not want to repeat it. As we've been reporting for a while now, lawsuits stalled the rollout of the New York market over the past 6 months. And in another legal, more mature state, Michigan, it's a big weekend. It's the 53rd annual Hash Bash on the campus of the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. What started as a protest in 1972 and an act of civil disobedience now celebrates the legality of the plant in that state. And John Sinclair was at the first Hash Bash and is considered one of the great counterculturists of his generation. Sadly, John Sinclair passed away this week at the age of 82 from heart failure. He was one of the leaders of the White Panther Party and created the so-called Guitar Army, whose mission it was to wage, quote, total assault on racists, capitalism, and the criminalization of marijuana. John was arrested in 1969 for sharing 2 joints with a narc. His sentence, 10 years. In 1971, his story caught the attention of some of the legends of music at that time, Stevie Wonder, Bob Seger, and legendary radicals from that age, Abbie Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, and Allen Ginsberg. 15,000 people showed up for the attention-grabbing concert, including John Lennon and Yoko, one who showed up at 3 a.m. to sign a tribute to John Sinclair. John would be very proud of the turnout for the 53rd Hash Bash this past weekend in Ann Arbor, and our Michigan reporter Amie Carter was there and has her Michigan report from that party that happened this weekend in Michigan.
We brought John out here years ago because at the time he was an award-winning DJ down in New Orleans, and we knew that this event was based on his hard work and the time he spent in prison. So it meant a lot to us to get him back involved in the weed game.
And that was Adam Brooke, also known as Mr. Hash Bash, who has been the opening speaker for the event the last 3 decades. I'm Amie Carter with Michigan Weedsters for this week's Weed Talk News. On April 2nd, 2024, it was a very sad day here in Michigan. We lost our very own John Sinclair. He passed away at 82 due to heart failure. John Sinclair was known most for his activism, poetry, and music. Back in 1969, he was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison for the possession of 2 joints. That served as a bedrock for him and others to protest. John Lennon and Yoko Ono famously attended the 1971 Freedom Rally in Ann Arbor, which also included Stevie Wonder and Bob Seger, amongst 15,000 people. 2 days later, Sinclair was freed from jail. The Rally for Sinclair's Freedom became an annual event to protest drug laws known as the Hash Bash. It was a beautiful day of freedom fighters in Ann Arbor, including my son Jayden.
My name is Jaden Carter, and I'm from Flint, Michigan. I'm up here talking today because I was on Dr. Phil in 2014, and my mom almost lost me. I lost myself. I've been in and out of placements, and my whole life has been an absolute miserable life. It's been a struggle every single day. And, anxiety is a thing, depression's a thing, and that needs to be shined on. And the way I see this is I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be alive if I didn't have my cannabis, my medication. And Jayden's law is a law that makes it so kids can have their medication at school And I feel like we need to have that law in place because people like me need my medication in school. It's not okay to discriminate against me or anybody else.
I'm Amie Carter with Michigan Weedsters with this week's Weed Talk News.
Coming up in our next block, why isn't anyone paying their bills in the cannabis industry? We'll subscribe and follow as we move on to the B block.
Some of the largest companies, as you mentioned, Tilton Weed Maps, Harborside, Green Solutions, Medicine Man, many of them have had successful exits. We've made good money in the industry. We want to now give back. We want to now help the small guy or gal that has an idea but doesn't have the friends and family, doesn't have the connections, doesn't have their own equity to contribute. We want to help those guys get into the industry, be able to, realize their dreams, be able to do something in addition to what it is they're currently doing now. This doesn't interfere with that. It's not an exclusive. And what we want to do is we want to help birth some new entrepreneurs because you need capital to be able to do that.
Well, welcome to the B block of Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto. One of the biggest challenges in the industry is trying to get vendors or ancillary companies to pay their bills on time. Of course, not being able to take advantage of the 280E in business tax write-offs, local impact fees, and other regulations make the profit margins extremely small. This week, the Whitney Group released a report that the U.S. medical and adult use industry owe $3.8 billion in debt for delinquent payments. And that figure is expected to increase to $4.2 billion before the end of this year. Considering that the average percentage of debt for agricultural businesses is 13%, the debt accumulated by the industry is slightly under that amount. But none have the regulatory restrictions that cannabis businesses have to deal with. Paying bills that are due or forgiven after 120 days is not uncommon in this industry. And that just puts more strain on any business. In Florida, one of the largest MSOs in the country, Trulieve, dominates the medical-only market in that state. And now their Supreme Court has paved the way to add the adult use question on the ballot this November. 6 more MSOs are contributing to the cause of smart and safe Florida. Of course, for the second year in a row, they still have to get enough signatures to guarantee a spot on the ballot. And they are starting to collect the over 891,000 signatures necessary. It's a lot. In 2016, when the medical question was on the ballot, it passed by 71%. This time, the vote has to exceed 60% for it to become law 6 months after the election. Smart and safe Florida will have a battle on its hands, even if the voters approve adult use, since both Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody and their governor Ron DeSantis oppose it. DeSantis stated this past week, if it passes, it will, quote, reduce the quality of life in Florida, unquote. There's still good quality of life in Oregon, which is where Marian Kersagi lives and is in business and reports for us every single week.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. News out of Oregon this week is again full of enforcement. Gifts to government employees were reported this week. The Capitol Press reported that Oregon's Watermaster staff accepted gifts of cannabis and alcohol. 4 staff members were placed on leave last year. The Oregon Water Resources Department monitors and enforces water rights, which have come under scrutiny as there are reports of illegal farms in southern Oregon using and contaminating water supplies. Next, a sting of black market operators has resulted in about $6 million of Oregon properties being seized. In 2021, search warrants were executed and yielded about 33,000 plants and 1,800 pounds of cannabis. The proceeds related to this operation were deposited into the DOJ Asset Forfeiture Fund and will be used to support crime victims. Next, hard drugs are now recriminalized in Oregon. The failed experiment of decriminalization has set back drug policy in Oregon. Addiction and mental health services that were supposed to be available never materialized, and the fentanyl crisis brought Oregon to a breaking point where recriminalizing hard drugs was the path the voters chose. And finally, Portland-based Whitney Economics published their 2024 U.S. Cannabis Delinquency Report this week. Total delinquencies, so accounts receivable, are approximately $3.8 billion. Cannabis cultivation is the hardest hit sector. Hopefully this year will be the year of cash flow. What are your 420 plans? Events will be hopping here in Oregon. Lots of live music and performances. Be sure to check out 420 in Emerald City downtown and the Whalers at High Noon and Boring. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
The industry's annual cannabis holiday is coming up on April 20th. 420 has become the unofficial code for cannabis culture that originated in San Rafael, California in 1971. In case you haven't heard the story of the Waldos, it was a group of high school friends who would meet at the Lewis Pasture statue across the street from their school at 420 to get high. Now it's become the biggest shopping day in the industry every year. And this year it falls on a Saturday. So many are taking advantage of the attention. In North Carolina, an illegal is going to launch that state's first dispensary at the Cherokee Nation Reserve. And it's being run by the Great Smoky Cannabis Company. And they announced they will have tested flower, edibles, tinctures, vape cartridges, and topicals. And now there is a catch. Only people who have a valid Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians medical card will be allowed to purchase at that site. You can apply at the website of the tribe on their Cannabis Control Board website. They will also be honoring other states' medical cards when they open too. All right. Well, in the meantime, other states are preparing for 420, which falls on a Saturday this year, like I said. But what better place to celebrate anything than Las Vegas? That's where Tina Tasaka reports every week. Here she is.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada Report for Weed Talk News. Another one bites the dust. You may think this report is a little sad. It won't be sad when we get to the 420 parties, but the sad news is this. The Trop is going down. Another casino hotel implosion. The Tropicana Hotel has been a Las Vegas icon. I should know. I spent many days, nights, and years there with my uncle who loved to gamble. 67 years. Even Resorts World had a huge rap on their casino. Tropicana, thank you for the 67 years of spectacular. After implosion, the new Oakland A's ball field will be rendered, and it will be spectacular. CLS Holdings USA, operating as Cannabis Life Sciences, is a producer of Nevada's top-selling vape brand, City Trees, and operates Oasis, one of Las Vegas' top dispensaries. CLS is thrilled to announce its latest market expansion into the Big Apple recreational cannabis market. This marks City Trees' second market entry outside of Nevada following a successful launch into the New Mexico earlier this year. To celebrate the brand launch in New York City, City Trees is a co-sponsored an incredible independent hip-hop artist showcase on April 4th at the THC in Soho. And now on to 420 events. It's that time of year. Everyone waits for the biggest parties and celebrations in our industry. Are there going to be great deals at the dispensaries? Are there ganja parties going to be all night long? Let's do the rundown for the parties in the 702. The 420 State Fair, this is the first of its kind and the premier event for Connect Hospitality and Fairchild Events. The all-day carnival-themed event offers guests an opportunity to explore the latest in cannabis with vendors and other companies to visit. In addition, guests will enjoy music, midway games, gourmet food trucks, attractions, and the venue itself has a massive dispensary with amazing flower, vapes, edibles, and so much more. Where's the location? It's Nuwu in downtown Las Vegas. Guests can mill around the massive space, which has a sky-high lounge, a rooftop deck, 3 acres, and an outdoor courtyard. This outdoor courtyard at Nuwu features a central stage, vendor activation area, and an open-air cannabis consumption bar. Jen Tregmaglino, most of us call her Jen T, she's the CEO of Connect Hospitality, and she said, "We are thrilled to bring the inaugural 420 State Fair to Nuwu. The outdoor courtyard and lounge is a perfect space to fill with fun activations and activities for our guests. We hope to create something really special and something that hasn't been done before on 420 in Las Vegas." We are too, Jen T. The doors are going to open at noon, and the event closes at 2 a.m. Tickets can be purchased at 420statefair.com. And Weed Talk News has received exclusive news about another happening at the 420 State Fair. Can you say Billy Idol? No, he's not going to be singing. Can you say White Wedding? There will be a group wedding, vow renewal, on stage at 4 p.m. with a celebration toast to follow 420. Sorry, at 420. Now that is LOVE. Maybe I should call Jamie Foxx. Anyway, congratulations to the lucky couples. All right, more events. Reggae in the Desert. This is open to all ages and will be held downtown at the Clark County Amphitheater. This is amazing music all day alongside Caribbean-style food, beverages, and Caribbean-themed vendors. They're going to be on hand. Area 15, they're known for their immersion entertainment. They're having a ganja white night with the Belgian bass duo. The Funk Sauce Jerome Baker and Mooney House NYC after party, the ultimate 420 fish after party, to be exact. That starts at 6 p.m. until 3 a.m. I can't believe people have stamina, but maybe it's sativa. You can get those tickets on Eventbrite, and that is near the Artist District. Folks, it's Earth Day on April 22nd, and there will be events at the Springs Preserve in Las Vegas. So please do what you can to soothe and heal our planet, even if it's a small contribution. And that's the 7:02. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is Weed Talk News.
When we come back for the C Block, we've got no fewer than 6 reports from different states, coast to coast. Stay with us.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.
Welcome back to Weed Talk News for the week of April 8th. This is the C Block, where we have reports from no fewer than 6 different legal states. I'm Alaina Pinto. The race for 25 or the 25th legal adult use state just lost another contender. It's Hawaii. Hawaii lawmakers in the House Finance Committee rejected the state's Senate-approved adult use legalization bill, and that means it's wait till next year for the Aloha State. The reason for the rejection? The devastating fires suffered on Maui this year. Well, meanwhile, Arizona is open for business every day, and prices are actually going down in flower and in concentrates. And with that story and more, here's the Arizona Cannabis Report with Karen Black.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. PedalFast is one step closer to its goal of becoming the largest cannabis distributor in the country. The California company recently acquired the sales and distribution arm of Phoenix-based Flow Distribution for an undisclosed amount. The acquisition follows PedalFast's $8 million capital raise at the beginning of this year, so we can do the math to some extent. Executives at both companies expressed very positive sentiments about the transaction. Now for some numbers from the Grand Canyon State. If you're a concentrate connoisseur, there's good news for you. Average prices dropped nearly 25% in 2023 compared to 2022. And if you're a flower fan, there's good news too. Arizona is the least expensive on a wholesale basis, maybe because there's not a cap on cultivation here. But if you prefer pre-rolls, not so much. Arizona has the most expensive ones in the entire country. And all you vapors are representing. Vape cartridges accounted for 36% of total cannabis sales last year. Overall, Arizona ranked number 7 for the least expensive products by state, according to LeafLink. One final figure, Arizona collected $176.2 million in excise taxes on cannabis in 2023. Last but not least, congratulations to Tempe-based Sonoran Roots for being ranked the 3rd best cannabis company to work for in the cultivation category by Cannabis Business Times. That's all for the Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
Delaware was the 22nd state to approve adult use, and the existing commissioner of the Delaware Office of Marijuana announced this week that they are still on schedule for a launch in March of next year. Well, right now, the nation's smallest state has a medical program, but get this, only 17,000 patients are signed up. When they opened in March, they were targeting about 85,000 adult use consumers. So that sounds like just one county in California, but still the nation's largest market. And that's where Lavana Vassow reports from every week. Here's her California Cannabis Report.
I'm Lavana Vassow with the Bay Sash reporting for PCM with this week's California Report for We Talk News. On March 29th, there was an enforcement bust on an illegal cultivation in Oakland on the 700 block of Kevin Court. Multiple agencies, including Fish and Game, were involved. In a press conference, CBS reported over 21,000 plants were eradicated, which law enforcement values at over $10 million. This was the 3rd big bust in Oakland in the past 6 months. In addition to Oakland, there are massive busts going on all around California as the 2024 growing season comes out of the cold. An article published on April 4th on Yahoo News reported that the San Bernardino Sheriff Department down in Southern California are conducting 6 to 10 raids a week. In other news, High Times has quietly and suddenly shut down 3 of its branded dispensaries and stores in California in the past 6 months. What's more, according to an article published by CRB Monitor, the closures come after months of failing to pay taxes, rent, and health insurance premiums. And former employees said that they were offered no severance and some were owed back pay. They also said that High Times senior management gave the workers no notice of the impeding closures, but clearly they were signs. Finally, a press conference was held in San Francisco to announce SF Weed Week, and Mayor London Breed showed up to support the new event. In her address, she tipped her hat to San Francisco's rap group RBL Posse by quoting their 1992 song, "Don't Gimme No Bammer Weed." This song is my personal anthem on my FM weekly show, The Bay Sesh. on 89.5 FM KZCT OzCat Radio Vallejo from 3 to 6 p.m. Wednesdays. I've always been a proud of RBL Posse, the Bay Area and Northern California, for our heavy emphasis on smoking the world's finest buds. Next week, I will be back with the hottest 420 events across the state. And if you want to see more about that, follow my Instagram at the Bay Sesh, where I'll be posting and telling you about those from coast to coast. I'm Lavana Vasa from the Bay Sesh, reporting for PCM with this week's California Report for We Talk News.
The name on the New York State lawsuit marquee is Leafly, and that publicly traded company rallied after the district Supreme Court's decision in their favor, perhaps opening up advertising to cannabis marketing. Our man in stocks, Doug Miller, who is high on Wall Street, and he is always watching the volatile world of publicly traded cannabis stocks. So here's his weekly report.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Weed Talk News. Leafly Holdings, Inc. stock rallied after a New York State judge struck down a marketing ban for cannabis companies in the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act that regulates the state's pot industry. New York Supreme Court Judge Kevin Bryant issued an amended decision that sided with a case brought by Leafly after it was prevented from including an ad for a Buffalo-based cannabis dispensary on its website. Bryant's initial decision struck down the bulk of the state's act, but then he narrowed the move to focus on its marketing ban, according to reports. This court is constrained to find that the regulations are an unconstitutional violation of petitioners' free speech rights as set forth in the New York State's Constitution, Bryant said in his initial decision. Leafly filed a legal action to open up access to its website, which helps consumers shop for and compare cannabis products and find dispensaries. So let's see how this affects the stock price. It was trading around $3.32, and it's forming a nice base, but I would watch for dips as it's been running up and it wants to pull back. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
In Canada, Debbie Facey reports from Ontario, where they continue to sort out their medical program. Here's Debbie's strain of the week from Canada.
This is Debbie Facey with WeTV, your Canadian correspondent with this week's Canadian strain. So what we have in Canada are two bigger stories, I should say, especially ones that we are focusing on. And so what we're going to be starting off with is with the medical cannabis aspect of the patients that we have here in Canada, especially Ontario. Many of them are not necessarily treated, but they aren't getting the attention that is needed, especially since we have become so involved with the recreational cannabis aspect of things. So Ontario is challenging most of these researchers when it comes to the numbers, to the benefits and therapeutic benefits for not only the recreational, but mainly for the medical patients. This is something that I benefit from, many other Ontarians benefit from, and I hope to be able to share more information, especially when it comes to some of the information and research that they have found out. Next, what we have is some of the Indigeni stores that are opening up here in Canada, especially Ontario, are facing the challenging of staying open. And this is due to the fact of them not necessarily fighting, but standing up to the right of being able to create their own sovereignty. This is something that the government has been trying to battle, especially due to the fact of the black market, illegal market, and the recreational legal market aspect. But this is something that we do face, especially when it comes to the cultures here and the land, and hopefully we are able to sort this out, especially because of the fact that it is rightfully theirs to be able to share as well. This is Debbie Facey with your Strain of the Week. Peace.
It was a very quiet week in Washington, D.C., but the Maryland market continues to expand while the District of Columbia adapts to their restrictions under the eye of the U.S. Congress. With that and more, here's Andrew Behringer.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the DC Area Report for We Talk News. The Biden administration once again included a rider in the president's budget released last month that prevents Washington, D.C. from using funds to implement a regulated adult use cannabis marketplace. The controversial rider was first introduced by Republican Congressman Andy Harris in 2014, shortly after D.C. voters overwhelmingly approved a ballot initiative to legalize cannabis possession and cultivation. While the initiative called for licensing and regulating adult use sales, Congress, which controls D.C.'s budget, agreed to the rider blocking that provision. Democratic lawmakers have repeatedly tried to remove the rider over the past decade since the district voters approved cannabis legalization, but the provision keeps returning after bipartisan negotiations. The district recently changed its medical cannabis rules, allowing any adult 21 and older to self-certify and purchase from licensed dispensaries. While DC adults can legally possess up to 2 ounces and grow up to 6 plants at home, the district remains unable to tax and regulate adult use cannabis sales. Now in Maryland, officials have announced the winners of the nation's first cannabis licensing lottery exclusively for social equity applicants across all license categories. 174 growers, processors, and dispensaries were approved. The Maryland Cannabis Administration held the lottery last month as the state approaches 1 year since launching its adult use cannabis market, which has seen record-breaking sales month after month, totaling $96.5 million in December alone. Social Equity Director Audrey Johnson highlighted the significant representation of Black individuals and women among the approved applicants, affirming their commitment to diversity. She called it a milestone in providing access to those harmed by the war on drugs. From the outset, Maryland prioritized an equity-centered legalization approach, initially only accepting applicants business owned by residents of disproportionately impacted areas. Now, once again, I'm Andrew Barringer, reporting for We Talk News.
It's been 1 week since Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin vetoed the adult use legalization bill that his legislature had presented to him. And after that devastating disappointment, it didn't stop a new medical dispensary to open. And Joe Parsons was there, has that story in his Virginia Cannabis Report.
I'm Joe Parsons from the Virginia Cannabis Connection with the Virginia Cannabis Report on We Talk News. After the disappointing news last week, the latest buzz is whether or not the governor will now try to uproot the already thriving medical cannabis market. In his full veto statement last week, he made it known publicly that he thinks cannabis is bad for the Commonwealth, no matter how you use it. There is, however, one medical operator that's willing to rise to the challenge, and that's Rise Cannabis. Green Thumb Industries, a multi-state operator from Chicago, has been in the business since 2015. And expanded into the Virginia market in 2021 with the acquisition of Dharma Pharmaceuticals. Since then, they've opened 6 full-service medical dispensaries in their health service area and are the best in testing and delivering safe, regulated product to their patients. They moved their Lynchburg location to a much larger and even more efficient retail space. The move was to give a better experience and a larger, more secure environment with increased parking area and to reduce the waiting time for patients. I was proud to attend the grand reopening ceremony held this week and to meet some of the people that believe in the cannabis industry, including members of Green Thumb Industries, original Dharma co-founder and CEO Shanna Berry, and Chief Operations Pharmacist Mike Johnson. Here are some of the highlights, including Virginia market leader for Green Thumb Industries Jack Page on how Rise Cannabis has been accepted by the Commonwealth and its potential for growth. We're inside at Rise Cannabis, the new location at 3219 in Lynchburg. The ribbon cutting ceremony will commence in just a few minutes. Here we go.
3, 2, 1, cut! Oh. You got this? Yeah!
That was a lot of fun. It was truly an honor. I'll be at the Virginia 420 Festival on April 18th through the 20th. And hope to share the stories of many others in our neck of the woods who help making our industry grow, regardless of how some politicians feel about our plant medicine. I'll see you all there. That's this week's Virginia Cannabis Report. Reporting from We Talk News, I'm Joe Parsons from the Virginia Cannabis Connection. Till next time, stay lifted.
And finally, tonight, there's a bizarre story coming out of Europe about drones delivering food packages, drugs, and weed to inmates in southern France and Belgium prisons. This is not an isolated incident. It seems inmates were calling in orders to a company called Drone to France. And sure enough, it was a botched delivery that brought attention to the practice, and authorities moved to shut down that company. And however, it didn't stop over 1,000 deliveries a year to be successful. So those deliveries included phones, fast food, and drugs. There you go. That will do it for this week's Weed Talk News. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. I'm Alaina Pinto. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
We're working on helping startups and companies that need relatively small amounts of money, meaning $500,000 or less. And what we're doing is we've got a funding source that's not basing it on your business plan, on your acumen, it's not a venture, it's debt, but it's based on a credit score and 2 years of tax returns with income. And with that, we can get you money.
What if we're right? What if all of a sudden they discovered that there is medical use for marijuana and that it is good for you and it's better than alcohol and it's better than opioids and it helps your health? What if we're right? What if they find that out?
Specific cannabinoids have medical value. These are facts.
I'm here today in hopes to assist in removing the demonized stigma of cannabis and the perception that cannabis is just about getting high. The true base of this plant has to be known.
I don't think anybody should ever go to jail for cannabis. Get some medicine, and everybody should have access to it.
This is something which, at the very, very least, is the key to alleviating suffering and extending life for millions of human beings. Right? For returning some kind of balance to our society, and quite possibly of restoring our planet's natural balance as well.